We are live with my friend Elliot Williams, who is going to be talking to us about the book that he wrote called Five Bullets. But we were just kikiing a little bit about some of the stuff we've been doing on CNN lately and saying how much I love being on the Audie Cornish show because I just think she's so smart and it's bright and early, and how I could never do the late night shows because I just can't hang with the debaters. I love what McGowan does, and I love what Adam Mockler does, but I get too scared. I would cry.
It's a lot. It's intense. It's intense. And people look, and this is one of the themes of the book, Five Bullets.
Yeah.
Sort of, people when tuning into media, people like the acrimony and the fighting and the stress, and it's a tale as old as time. It's not a criticism of Abby's show
Yeah.
or anything else. It's just
No,
that
it's a
something.
great show. It just scares me.
Yeah, it's intense, but people are motivated often
Yeah.
by sensation, and not just sensation,
Mhm.
the sort of conflict. Uh,
Yep.
we saw it in 1980s New York, and we can talk about that in the context of my book. But you see it today on social media and everywhere else. So here we are under our desks.
Here we are under the desk for the late night episode. So I am excited about this book. I think it's very interesting. And I also think it's important for people to be making time to read books because so often we are inundated by the news. We need to force ourselves to take the time to look back at how we got to where we are and see if there's any parallels from history we can draw from to create better solutions this time, but also just have time to reflect and just enjoy a book. And so I'm excited about yours. Tell me about Five Bullets.
All right, so back up for folks that don't know the story of Bernard Goetz. In 1984, Bernard Goetz shot four unarmed black teenagers on the New York City subway. He says they were trying to mug him. They just asked him for $5. Needless to say, he pulls out an unlicensed gun, shoots them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, leaves one of them critically injured, paralyzed from the mid-chest down, and brain damage for the rest of his life. It set off decades, quite frankly, of debates in New York City and around the world about race, crime, vigilantism, and all of the things. Yeah, and so I wrote the book not just in a bizarre way, in a love letter to New York and the place that I was born and grew up in and around, but just sort of with the echoes that story has to today when we talk about vigilantes and who gets who's allowed to be afraid in culture, but also what we started with, the media bias and what makes people mad that they tune into, and they did in the 1980s and they do today. And so all of these things come up in this book that's really about a story from the 1980s, but really is all about how we live today.
So did the other four men die? Is that a spoiler for the book? No.
Oh, no. It's not a spoiler for the story either. So nobody dies. They all end up injured. But a thread I get into in the book is that these are young men from the housing projects in the Bronx who really didn't have a ton of options in life. And certainly this story turbocharged their decline. And before, two are deceased now. The other two, one ends up brain damaged. One's kind of moved on with his life a little bit, but today these young men were as much emblematic of society's failures as much as anything having to do with them. And so, that's a thread running through the book as well. It's sort of almost the power of destiny to some extent, and sort of the tragedy of these folks.
Isn't it crazy how, you're talking about a story from the 1980s, and I can't stop thinking about just how much gun violence we continue to deal with and how many vigilantes there are with guns who continue to not make the world a safer place, even though the gun manufacturers told us if everybody carried a gun, everybody'd be safe. Yeah. How do you draw that to today? What do you think people can learn?
So a couple things. One, there's a chapter in my book about the rise of the modern NRA, and not just, the NRA being the NRA. I didn't realize until I started, there are things you learn when you write a book. I didn't know that this was going to be a chapter in the book, but ultimately the NRA was, prior to the mid 1970s, a gun safety organization. It really was hunting and skeet shooting with grandpa, Boy Scouts and camping trips and all that business. It really was a takeover of the NRA in the late 1970s by the activists within the organization that made it a a Second Amendment advocacy organization.
Mhm.
Well, a couple years after that, this shooting happened in the book Five Bullets that I wrote about. The shooting happened, and the NRA had a poster boy in Bernard Goetz. He was white. He paid taxes. He'd
Mhm.
never been convicted of a crime before. He lived in a blue city in a blue state that had denied him a gun permit. He was everything the NRA wanted to make
Mhm.
a self-defense argument. Now, he ends up not being a perfect face for any organization. He's odd, he's quirky, he's a loner, he's racist, and
Mhm.
ultimately, they backed away from him personally, but they ended up giving him $40,000 for his defense. And so, literally, literally, it's not just the sort of metaphorical ties to today. There are literal ties in through the book Five Bullets that I get into, tied into today's world that we're in.
How did you get from the NRA going, "Hey, this guy is weird, he's quirky, he's not our poster boy," to the NRA endorsing a weird, quirky, lives in his mom's basement Kyle Rittenhouse at the time? Like, have we degraded as society so
It
much?
no, there's 2 questions. There's 2 questions. It's society and the NRA itself. I mean, the NRA
Yeah,
has just gone full whole hog activist, um,
right.
in these years since then. And something I talk about in the book as well is Kyle Rittenhouse, only insofar as look at who are vigilantes who get lifted up in America. Look at who gets
Ugh.
celebrated for acts of violence. It's the Kyle
Mhm,
Rittenhouses, it's the Daniel Pennies. They are more often than not white men who get
mhm,
celebrated for acts of violence. And a point that I make throughout the book, Five Bullets, is what would happen had the races been reversed of the shooter
mm,
victims. If a black man had shot 4 white teenagers on the subway, it would have been totally a different story. And
yeah,
we need to acknowledge that. I think a lot of people, many of the people I talked to in the course of the book, did not want to admit that point. But
mhm,
it's just an inescapable reality of
yeah.
how we see crime.
I remember, speaking of, what if the shooter was black? Remember the DC sniper and how
My
fucking
God,
crazy everybody was about that? Like,
yes.
anytime, it's Second Amendment for everybody until the black folks are armed, and then it's all of a sudden like, well, it's not a safety thing. Oh, that's not the right kind of person. Yeah,
2 things. One, I think I'm gonna plug in because I fear my phone's gonna die.
I know.
And I'm fearing how sad would that be if we don't? So I'm just going to plug it into this USB cable right here. But um,
Yeah, working under the desk is difficult. You got to come in prepared.
gotta come in prepared. No, I just
New backup batteries.
Here's the thing. As we discussed prior to this, I had a whole setup with the ring light and
I
the
know.
external webcam, but I was having issues with the syncing to Substack, and so anyway, so now I'm on the phone. But needless to say, my phone's dead right now. But now we're plugged in. Um, what was your question? It was a good one. I had something about the
It
book
was
on
a
it.
question about, remember when we were talking about, like, well, what if black people are the shooters? Like,
Yeah.
remember the chaos about the DC sniper and people being crazed that a black man had a gun and was like potentially shooting at white people in Washington DC, and how it's always Second Amendment, rights bear arms until black people bear arms,
Yeah.
and then
Oh,
all of a
so I
sudden it's
remember. No,
not
no,
safe.
oh, no. So I remember. So I
The
have a
Black
former.
Panthers can't be armed. That's dangerous in New York. We can't have that. Yeah.
So it's a couple things. One, Black Panthers, and if I can find it quickly, there's a page in the book with the photograph of the Black Panthers that ultimately frightened Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
In which here it is. Oh my God, look at that! I opened it to it right there.
There it
This is
is.
literally
Mhm.
what made Ronald Reagan a gun control advocate, which was the Black Panthers, the idea of
Mhm.
armed black men, and it's widely been reported now that that's the thing that turned Reagan sort of
Mhm.
anti-gun. Oddly enough, people don't know that because they think of him as a Republican. So I have a former colleague who used to say, "What if you took every National Rifle Association?" Um, billboard or poster or whatever else and just put the word black in it. Like,
Yeah. See what they do. Yeah.
I believe in the right of my black son to defend himself.
Right.
I believe, and just, racially neutral statements that you would find on an NRA billboard.
Mhm.
I believe in the right of all black people to defend themselves against
Mhm.
the government. And if you view it in those terms, you realize, it's
They ain't
not
gonna
an
go for
escape
it.
point, right? And it's just sort of, um, It's a view. It's a view.
We see it even on TikTok when there's been discussions about like guns and the right thinks that they own all the guns, and then you'll see someone come on and be like, the left is armed. The left is just as armed. And people freak out because they think that the gun gives them some sort of like greater power, safety, or control over other people. And that's how the gun lobbies get you to buy like 20 and 30 guns. So, like, you can
Yeah,
only really shoot one at a time. What do you
yeah,
need 30 of them for anyway?
yeah,
But it's this idea that if I'm armed, then so is my neighbor, then I need two more. Like, it's that craziness in capitalism that makes the
yeah.
guns
But then
become so profitable.
yeah, the interesting thing, so in my book, so with Getz, so he'd been mugged once before by two
Mhm.
young black men, and which stuck in his head, and sort of was an unlicensed gun owner for much of his adult life.
Mhm.
Would just had a bunch of firearms and ultimately just traveled around everywhere with an unlicensed firearm. The one thing he was actually convicted of, not the attempted murder, not the reckless endangerment, not the attempted assault. The one thing he's convicted of in New York City in 1984 was the unlicensed firearm because he admitted to have possessed it outside of his house. That was
Mhm.
I mean, obviously he did it. He shot people with it. People saw it.
Yeah.
That's the one thing he's convicted of. But, it's interesting. It's other than the NRA chapter, I don't really get into sort of the broader history of guns and public safety and sort of the
Mm.
arguments about firearms in America. It's sort of a lurking in the background of the book Five Bullets. It's much
Mhm.
more about the broader social factors
Mhm.
around vigilante violence and who gets celebrated for their fear. And
Yeah.
um, it's what I found most fascinating is that, and I make this point later in the book, that ultimately one of the main arguments raised by Bernard Goetz about New York City, which was really rough in the early 1980s, and I talk
Mhm.
um the central arguments he makes are a lot of the arguments that his victims made about
Mm.
police, which is that they do not care about me and us.
Mm.
They are not looking out for me. Now, it's a
Mm.
different thing when a young black man from the Bronx is saying, "I don't trust the cops," than when a white guy from the West Village of Manhattan is saying, "I don't trust the cops."
Mhm.
But ultimately, the underlying sentiment was kind of the same, and it's sort of a fascinating little bit of everything folks have in common,
Mhm.
in a bizarre, perverse way. These men that Getz had absolutely no respect for as human beings,
Mhm.
but fundamentally their core argument was the same, which is that
They're neighbors still.
well,
You're still
they're neighbors
neighbors.
and the police and one, I think all cops are racist was that's the guys, and
Yeah.
two, Getz is I think the cops just aren't keeping our neighborhoods safe enough.
Mhm.
Nobody likes or trusts
Nobody
the police.
likes them.
And nobody likes them in 1984 in New York City. Nobody likes the cops. It's the one thing everybody has done. I will say, be real quick. One of the wildest stories. Curtis Sliwa, this.
Yeah.
So
The guardian angel.
Guardian Angels, who's this so, he's a central character in the book, and I
Okay.
interviewed him for it. Sliwa said the wackiest thing to me when I interviewed him, and he just paused at one point in the interview, and he goes, that's my Curtis Sliwa voice.
Yeah.
What if instead of pulling out that gun, Bernie pulled out a joint and just passed it around and did a puff puff pass? Because the one thing those five guys had in common is they all love that wacko tobacco. And it was
You
I
know what,
sort of,
Sliwa? Yes.
you know,
Sure.
everybody in
Sure.
84 New York hates the cops and everybody loves to smoke weed. And that sort of, I
I'll
almost
take
made that
it.
the ending of the book. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Elliot, it's so good to chat with you. The book is called Five Bullets. It's on my list to read. I am really
I got it
excited
right.
about it. And again, Five Bullets, there it is. And I really do want to encourage people to make the time to read because it could feel hard because there's so many news and so many
Oh,
headlines.
God.
The headlines will be there. Give yourself a chance to just sort of like be in a world of what if, and it'll help you with the headlines afterwards. Books help.
Oh, just to slow down. I mean,
Slow down.
all of our attention spans are fried right now. Even
Mhm.
those of us who try to not my kids' attention
Yep.
spans are totally fried. And there's just something for in this world that is truly crazy right now, like nothing
Mhm.
many of us have ever lived, just getting out of the news cycle to read a book or touch grass or whatever else,
Yeah.
or take a book out to a park, touch grass, and read a book.
See, that's what we need to do. And you guys can keep your headlines if you read 5 bullets. It's still very true crimey, okay? I'm not saying you got to give up all of the cortisol raising adrenaline that we're addicted to. Just maybe switch from screen to book. And I'm going to do that now. So thank you so much, Elliot. The book is 5 bullets. You can buy it anywhere that you get books. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Talk to you soon. Thanks. Take care. Be a great talk.
Bye.
Bye.